The subject of today's shir is the giving of the Torah in Jewish medieval art. As we're going to see, during the Tkufa of the Rishonim, it was quite common for people to own machzorim. Probably only the very wealthy people who owned these machzorim. And a machzer then meant something different than what it means today. Today, the word machzer means a siddur that we use for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. But if you think about it, why is it called a machzer? A machzer means a cycle. So what about davening Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur out of a thing there's no cycle there. The original term made a lot of sense. You had all the regular prayers, that was in your siddur, and then you had a machzer that was all the special tefillas for the entire cycle of the whole year. You had Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, and Pesach, and Shavuos, and Parshas Zachar, and Parshas Shkolim. Now, there's a reason why we don't have these anymore, and that's because many of the tefillas that they used to say on these days, we don't say anymore. And I'm talking about many dozens of pages on Pesach, and Shavuos, and the Dalet Parshiyos, and many other things. What was that? Not only we as Chabad is a little extreme in how little we say, but even in the world of Ashkenaz, they cut out major some of these chunks, as we'll soon see. So the need to have a machzer that literally cycles through the entire year became considerably diminished, and that's when Chabad doesn't exist, and never existed. There never was a Chabad machzer for the whole cycle of the year. And in other kehillas, it became less important. Some of them still have it, but it became less important. So during the Tkufa of the Rishonim, when they had these machzorim, and if you were a person who had money, or if you were a person who was a wealthy person, so you would hire a professional scribe to write the calligraphy in beautiful letters, and then an artist to do the art. And so I don't know the exact number, there's a nice number of these medieval machzorim that have survived to today. They exist in different libraries around the world. For many years they were ignored. People didn't really focus on them, and they didn't realize that there's a wealth of information in these machzorim. So our focus today is going to be in terms of the Matan Torah, because as we're going to see, there are pieces of art in each one of these machzorim. But one of the interesting things is that what gets depicted more than anything else is the scene of Matan Torah. The scene of Matan Torah is depicted again and again in each one of these different machzorim. So we're going to take a look at these different scenes, and we'll notice what's unique about each one of them, and then we'll try to discuss where they're coming from. And very often, as you're going to see, it's grounded in a source from medieval Ashkenaz as well that discusses that issue. That's the general introduction. Okay, so first up is this goes by, each one of these has a name. This one's called the tripartite machzer. Tripartite is an English word that means made of three. And the reason made of three is currently this machzer exists in 3 different volumes, and it's in 3 different museums. One's in Hungary, and one's in Oxford, and one's at the British Library. So the piece the Shavuos part, in other words, because it's a whole year, the Shavuos part is the piece in the British Library. What you could see over here is on the right side of the page, you could probably recognize Hakel b'satzumei tzuzecha, Agado b'chved shmecha, b'fi yishar and tisreimam, tisbarech. Yishtabach is abbreviated. The reason it's abbreviated is because you have that in your siddur, so I guess that's why it's abbreviated. Then there's a Kaddish. Under the Kaddish you see it says Baruch Hu, and then the last 2 lines is the bracha of Yotzer Re'er Cheshach Eisei Shalom Ve'eres Hakel. This is Shacharis for the first day of Shavuos. And then right after the Ve'eres Hakel, this left-hand page is this page right here. You see, we're beginning something big. You have like a sharblat, a title page, and there's a piece of art. We'll take a closer look at it momentarily. And under it, it starts a piyut. This piyut is a piyut we're going to see like 5 or 6 times today. It's called Adoin. Adoin is the first word, so that's in the initial word panel. You see over there, it looks like Aroin, but that's very common in the initial word panels for the word to be a little off, and I'm not entirely sure why. But the word is Adoin Imnani is the name of this piyut that was said at this point in the bracha of Yotzer Re'er Cheshach Eisei Shalom Ve'eres Hakel, and you see it goes in the seder of the Aleph base. And on the left, there's a commentary written on this piyut. We'll come back to the picture in a second. Just first, what's going on over here? So there's something called the yotzris. There's even an expression, someone is mevalvel the yotzris. What is the meaning of this? So today, again, we don't really have this anymore. But it used to be that on a special day, we'll talk about, right, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, it says Yotzr, so we'll talk about what that is in a second. It's a little different. We don't do this even in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. What was done, there's a whole history here, both in Ashkenaz and in Sfarad. On a special day, you don't just do your regular Yotzr, Varecheshach, Hamer Loretz, Hakol Yaducha. No, it doesn't work that way. Just like Shabbos, you do not Hamer Loretz, you do Hakol Yaducha, and Kel Adin, it's unique. So on Yom Tif, or even on Shabbos Zachar, you're going to do something unique. And they each one had a name. So the one that you did in Yotzer was called Yotzer. Then you inserted one. What was that?
What does in mean?
In the bracha, Yotzer Varechesh Hashem Hakel, you say that piyut, and then you go on to the Hamer L'Aretz or Hakol Yaducha. And it's a lengthy piyut. It goes on for a few pages. Then, in the next bracha, when you come to the area of Oifanim V'chayes HaKodesh, this one was called Oifen. In other words, these are names. It's like, what's the Oifen for today? What's the Yotzer for today? Right? This is the name. The Oifen, again, a piyut was said in V'Oifanim V'chayes HaKodesh. Now you're understanding why these machzorim were so big and useful. And then there was another piece that was called the Ma'ira. The Ma'ira was used in Yotzer HaMa'iris. Then you had the Ava. The Ava was the piyut that was said in Avas Oilam. Zulas was the piece that was said in, right, but Ein Lanu Eida L'Kiv Zulas Chasala. And Geula was said in the area of Shira Chadasha when you say the bracha of Gal Yisrael. So if you look, for example, at the Levush in Hilchos Shavuos, Siman Tav Tzadik Dalin or Rechaim, he says, and the Yotzers for the day are, and Yotzer is the first one, so all of them got called Yotzers, even though Yotzer is really only the first one, and Oifen is the second one, and Ma'ir is the third one, but people just call these Yotzers. And he says what they are for Shavuos. And what's interesting is you see he lived in the 1500s. You see he doesn't have all six of them. Already in his time, they were only saying two or three of these. They were saying the Yotzer and the Oifen. I believe that's it. There was no Ma'ira, there was no Ava, there was no Zulas, there was no Gula. It started going away. You look at the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, you look at the Mishnah Berurah, they don't even talk about this anymore. No one says Yotzers today. Even in Ashkenaz where they say all the piyutim. As far as I know, I shouldn't say no one, but it's very, very few people who are doing this. So they're like, is it appropriate? In Birchas Krishna, maybe we shouldn't be doing it. Now, in Shemana Esrei, there's a whole other thing, which is what we do by Tal and Geshem and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where we start inserting these types of things. That actually originally had a different name. It was called Kroivis and Kroivitz. But the name Yotzer kind of got applied to everything that we're adding on. But anyway, that's just the background in terms of what's this piyut of Adoin Imimani that we're not going to take a deeper look at. But this is in all the Ashkenazi Machzorim for the first day, Rosh Hashanah. This was the Yotzer. This was the thing that was said at the time. Okay.
I thought medieval gladiator killing blood. I thought blood.
Blood's coming. So here, the red, it symbolizes the blood.
When did it officially start?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. When did the Yotzers... Okay, anyway, here's a closer image of the Menachem just for you. We're going to go back. This is the page of this tripartite machzer. The dates, it's the 14th century. It was written between 1300 and 1329. Just for historical context, I didn't mention this before. The name like the Rush, he's living... at this time. The Rashba, he's living at this time, just to you have a placement in terms of history. Here's a closer look at this image that you see over here on the top of this Yotzer. And there's a whole bunch of important details that are interesting. So I guess let's start from the top and we'll go around. Right away you notice that the luchos is square. So you're going to see the luchos round dates back to this century, meaning it was in medieval art in the 1300s by Yidden where they started adopting the rounded top to the luchos, something the Rebbe spoke about at great length and was very disappointed about that. But one of the things you're going to see is many of the examples did not do that. Many of the examples went with flat top luchos, even though it wasn't a pure square. None of the examples are pure squares, which is what the Rebbe says, that if you look at the Gemara, that's what they are, they're pure squares. But the flat top you definitely have, and there is a frame that's uniting both of them in terms of the luchos. What was that? What about the menorahs in medieval art? Let's come back Hanukkah. We'll talk about that. Okay, what else interesting? You see from the sky, there are a few trumpets and one shofar that's coming down. That's a reference to it speaks about there was a sound of the shofar at Matan Torah. Notice Moshe Rabbeinu, the person who's receiving the luchos. First of all, he's standing on a hill that's aflame, the fire. You could see the fire there, Har Sinai Oshan Kuloi, and there's Aish. But it's interesting that they made him without a beard. And that's especially interesting when you compare him to Aaron, who's standing probably right behind him with this thing, where he does have a beard. So, what was that? So is it because Moshe is younger than Aaron, so the artist feels that that's something he wants to convey?
30?
No, Moshe is much older than 30 at this point. Yeah,
80.
much older, yeah, something like that, yeah. He's 80 when he's standing b'fnei Parai Melech Mitzrayim, the pasuk says. He's 80 when he's negotiating with Parai. So he's an elderly person. And then behind him, you have a group of male Jews who are wearing a conical hat. This is a hat with a cone on the top. So a brief moment just about these hats, because we're not going to spend too much time on it. You're going to see these hats again and again in the art that we're talking about. In 1215, there was what was called the Fourth Lateran Council. I think it was the Fourth Lateran Council, where the bishops in Europe got together and they said the Jews have to be separate from Yidden and from Christians, and one of the things, they have to wear distinctive clothing. And so there were laws that the non-Jews said that you have to wear certain things. The concept of a badge first emerged then. And one of the things was the hat, that a Jew had to wear this unique hat. It seems that 100 years ago it was a stylish hat and everyone was wearing it. It was all the rage. And then kind of the society always evolves and changes, so then it was an old-fashioned hat by then, and they're like, Jews, you need to wear this. And so we see this in a lot of the images. You're going to see the hats, but it's only men who are wearing the hats, and we'll talk about the women in a second. Because right behind them, you see a group of people with animal heads, and they don't have the Jewish hats, and they are wearing tichels and clothing that makes them look like women. And so it does seem like these are women. And that obviously raises the question of what's going on over here in terms of the animal heads. Why do these women... What was that? I can't hear? Could it be the Eid of Rav? No, they look like they're female. So I don't think it's the Eid of Rav. They're not. Oh, so one of them, I don't know if she's holding something or if most of the people have their hands up as a sign of readiness to accept the Torah, and I can't tell if what that black thing is. I don't know. I wouldn't know. So we're going to come back and circle back to the animal heads, because this is something that's kept a lot of art historians up and actually busy, actually giving them parnasa for the last 30 years, because the amount of literature that's been written on this is been immense. So we'll come back to that soon. Another thing just to take note, we'll come back to this later as well, is that the men and women are separated here. There is space between the men and women, and that's another thing that we'll talk about later, about separation between men and women in the context of Matan Torah.
What's the Hebrew word I'm talking about?
Odoin. It says Odoin imin mani, which is the first two words of the Yotzer for the first day of Shavuos, that is unfortunately no longer said anymore. Okay. Now, we're in the tripartite machzer. We're going to go a little further in the same machzer on the first day of Shavuos, and you have this page over here. This page is the Rus. We don't say Rus in Lubavitch. We say it in Tikkun Leil Shavuos, but in Nusach Ashkenaz, it is customary to say Rus. I'll go through the three reasons for this in a second. So here is during the davening, in the right spot, you have also the same style of panel in the beginning, and it has there the story of Rus in the art, as we'll see in a second. And interestingly, the text of Rus is on the right side, and they put a commentary in. The commentary is from Rabbi Yosef Kara. It's probably a Rishon that most Jews didn't hear of. He was alive with Rashi, and he knew Rashi, and he also wrote commentary on the Torah. That was not so popular, but he was the same style of Pshat, and later commentaries are always quoting him. And we do have some of his commentaries, and this is one of them. We have it because of this. This is the only version of Rabbi Yosef Kara's commentary to the book of Rus that we have, and it's only because of this machzor was preserved, and it wasn't preserved because of Rabbi Yosef Kara's commentary, it was preserved because of the art, but a side benefit is that we have now his commentary to the book of Rus. So before we analyze the picture, let's just talk about why we're doing Rus. So I put here the 3 classic reasons for why the halacha says to read Rus on Shavuos. So the first thing is the Abudraham. The Abudraham says that it's a seasonal reason. What's the seasonal reason? The Rus talks about the harvest. That's one of the main motifs in the book, is about the harvest and how Rus is going to be collecting the gleanings that remain behind, and that's how she and Naomi are going to survive. And Shavuos is the time, is a yomtiv. That is, the Torah calls it uvekutzurchem es ksir artzechem. It's related to the time of the harvest, and so therefore it's appropriate for us to do this. One of the achronim adds, I don't remember who it is right now, an interesting Hosafa, that the Torah, when it speaks about Shavuos and that it's the time that you harvest the grain, the Torah mentions that the poor people, you have to let them collect. That's where the Torah says it in Parshas Amar. It says it right there next to Shavuos. And that's what happens in the story of Rus, where she's the poor woman who comes and collects. So that's the first reason that Abudraham gives. Abudraham then gives a second reason, and that is the Gelus explanation, and that is Rus is the prototypical Giyores Tzedek, who did it right, who came for the right reasons. And Yidden at Matan Torah were essentially Gerim, because they weren't really Jews in the full halachic sense until they went through the process of the bris, and they had to have a milah, and they had to have a tefillah, and they had to go through that purification process, and so therefore Rus is a good symbol for what Jews went through back then. This is Abudraham's explanation. Abudraham, by the way, is living at the exact same time of these manuscripts, just in a different place in Spain. The Magen Avraham, writing in the 1600s, he gives another reason. He explains that we learn a moedic lesson from Rus. Rus went through difficult hardship, and Shavuos is a time we think about Torah. We're thinking about Torah. We have to recognize, he says, that you're only going to get it, Torah, you're only going to be able to learn it and acquire it, and it's going to resonate with you with with difficult work. Someone who lives a life that's all about pleasure, you're not going to be able to get the Torah. You have to have a little bit of a Rus mentality, and that is a willingness to go through discomfort in order to then be willing to look at Torah. And he goes this: when a person has a lot of pleasures, and you don't want to go through something that's difficult, learning could be difficult. This is the explanation that the Magen Avraham gives for why we do Rus on Shavuos. And then there's a commentary by the B'char Shor, meaning it's one of the Achronim who wrote Simla Chadasha on Shechita, so he's very famous. And he links it up with David HaMelech. He says, David HaMelech, we know, passed away on Shavuos. And Chazal tell us that tzaddikim are often born on the very day that they passed away. So you could speculate and guess that David HaMelech was born on Shavuos. Who's David HaMelech's Baba? Rus. And so it makes so much sense on the day of his birthday to point to his lineage or where he came from, which is what the book of Rus is really doing, because the ending makes a whole yichus to David HaMelech. And so this is a third reason, or really a fourth reason, for why we're reading, but why we're reading Rus on Shavuos. Okay, now a closer look at the image over here. So it looks like it's going from left to right, even though a Jewish artist would presumably have made it right to left. So first you have the lady all the way on the left is wearing red, and she has her two hands like this. So that's a gesture of please. I'm asking, I'm begging, I'm pleading. And so the guy in green is probably Boaz. And this is the point in the story where she's saying, do you mind if I glean from your field and take the things that fall, the leftovers? And behind Boaz is a guy with some sort of tool, so we'll just assume that that's a worker in the field. So scene one is what happens earlier in the story, where Rus approaches Boaz and says, is it okay if we can take grain from your field? Move over to the right, you see what seems to be the same lady, wearing this interesting looking hat and holding a sickle in her hand. So we'll assume that's Rus, who's about to, cut some grain. And next to her, you have a guy, not next to her, but further to the right, you have a guy in a red garment is just tying the grain. He's just doing the work. And next to him, you have another person in green who looks like she's doing the same work that Rus is and is just collecting the things. So she's probably another poor person collecting. And then behind them you have another person working for Boaz with a tool. And then all the way on the right, I don't know, pointing up. I'm not sure what that is, what's that symbolic of. Now what you notice over here is the animal heads again, and it's also consistent. It's the women who are getting the animal heads, and the men have regular faces, more or less.
Wouldn't the Haredi say that the animal heads because of sneeze? Wouldn't that be the thing they would go to? Meaning all the men are normal, they're this, they wanted to keep it, kosher.
Possibly. Was it because we're going to be using this in shul and it's inappropriate to look at women in shul? Possibly. But we'll circle back to that soon. Okay, so that's the last of the tripartite machzor. We're left with a major question about the animal faces, but otherwise, pretty much we saw two main scenes that are there related to Shavuos. And now I want to show you some other machzorim from the same time period, from the same place, that have the same features, the animal faces. And here is the initial page. It's the same piyut. This is just from the loud machzor. This is composed a little earlier, 1270, 1280, so you're going back a little in time. This is in the Bodleian Library in Oxford. And as you can see, it's Adoin Imnani, Etzloi Shichnani, right? So it's that same piyut. It's at the same place. It's at Shoichenad, right over there where you start saying the Yotzres. Here you see the full page, and soon we're going to go into the top. Notice at the bottom, you may be able to see a guy wearing a Jew hat who looks like he's sticking a matzah into an oven. And we'll come back to that later as well. But for now, let's just focus what you have at the top. So you have at the top over here is the following. First of all, you have top left at about 9 o'clock. 10 o'clock. You have what looks like an angel, because she has wings, with two luchos. Notice they're flat tops. And giving the luchos to the Jewish people. Now, on the right, interestingly, you have three animal-faced Jew hat, so they're men, because it's only men that wear those hats. So here the men are also animal-faced, not just the women, who are accepting what appears to be only one of the two tablets, which is a little bizarre, with some sort of ring at the top, which I'm not sure what that is. I'll come back to the one tablet in a second.
There's also writing on there. Yeah, there's some Hebrew writing on there.
That's probably from the other side. A lot of times it seeps through. I'm pretty sure it's the writing on the other side. Okay. It's the letters on the other side, yeah. Okay, now in the middle you have an arch, and in this arch you have what looks like a mizbeach and an animal on top of the mizbeach. And then there's a man standing there. That's I won't leave it as a tease. That's Moshe Rabbeinu, supposed to be Moshe, also with a big beak. Interesting looking beard there. He's holding one bucket of what appears to be blood in the right arm and one in the left arm with the blood coming out. It seems like he's sprinkling it on a separate group of women. Here the women don't have animal faces. Here they're women and they have regular faces. So it's exactly the opposite. They are separate from the men. They're not in the same place as the men. Something we'll come back to later on. And he's sprinkling the blood on them. So we know what this is. Although in the Kriya of Shavuos, we're not going to talk about this. But in Parshas Mishpatim, at the end of the Parsha, there's the Parsha that's known as the Moshe Amar Ale. And there's a big discussion about this. Well, first let me say what happens there. What happens there, Moshe goes up to the mountain, he's talking to Hashem. Nasa v'nishma, you have there. You don't have Nasa v'nishma in Parshas Yisro, B'Matan Torah. You have it at the end of Mishpatim. And he comes down, and then he does a whole ritual, where they make a mizbeach, they bring a carbon, they take the thing, it describes how he puts the blood into these multiple, agonos is the word, and then he says he sprinkles this onto the Jewish people, and this is the Dam HaBris. This is how the Jewish people it was a physical sign and covenant for the fact that they're entering into a bris with Hashem. And there's a machlokas, was this before Matan Torah or after? Rashi says, a muktam ocher b'Torah, that although it's in Parshas Mishpatim, really it happened on, I think he says, Gimel or Dalid Sivan. So that's what's being depicted here, and they're having the actual sprinkling of the blood on the women in this particular case. So one comment about the one luchos, and then we're going to just remain with the fact that you have the animal heads here, and we'll leave it as a question, and then we'll move on. So there is a Zohar that says like this: Amar Rabbi Yehuda v'haluchos ksiv. One of the times in the Torah when it describes the luchos, it doesn't say it with vavs. It doesn't have a vav after the lamed, and it doesn't have a vav after the ches. It says va'luchos without. So it's almost like in Hebrew, very often it's that vav that makes it a plural, right? Luchos, whereas one luchas ha'even could theoretically mean one. Ksiv chad, it's only one. Says the Zohar Terei Hava. Indeed, it was two. Umischazyon chad, and it looked like it was one. So I thought about this Zohar when seeing this picture, how the thing looked like one, but then I decided to negate it because I don't think that's what it means. Why is that? Because I think what the Zohar means was that because the luchos were square and not rounded, not arched, so when they were placed next to each other, it just looks like one big block. It doesn't look like two separate things. But the idea that it should only look like, I don't know, but that the two, what's clearly two, should turn into what looks like one, I'm not sure if there was some sort of message here. Was there a message of, we have a medrash, how Anoichi corresponds to Lo Sirtzach, Lo Yiyah corresponds to, right, Kabed Savicha corresponds, each one corresponds to the other. So was that sort of the message here? I'm not sure. I don't know. But it is interesting that the Zohar does say that it was two and looked like one. I don't know. Maybe that plays a role. Okay. Now, we're going to take a break. I showed you two machzorim.
Do any of these Svarim have a commentary from the artist?
No, the artist never wrote a commentary.
Or like notes what they were doing?
Yes. In brief notes, you'll see right here, it says Matan Torah. So we think that it came from the artist or right after the artist. So you have some of them. You go back. If you go back here, here there's nothing.
Give us
no, there's nothing. Yeah, there's nothing here. Okay. So in terms of
on the side, the purple and green dragons.
Where? In past one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So many of the paintings in these machzorim are animals. That's the most common thing. To have a nice, good, cute bird here and there. So it could be that. The other thing to point out is that there does seem many of the Matan Torah scenes do have birds. Remember, there is this medrash about how the birds didn't chirp, but it says that about other animals too. So I'm not entirely sure. But you will see a lot of birds in the thing. In terms of the angel, why the Jews generally didn't want to depict Hashem. So you needed a replacement. So instead of doing Hashem, you just do an angel. It is interesting because, as we know, I was thinking of dwelling on this, but not just to cause interest of time. The Malachim didn't want the Yidden to get the Torah. So the idea of that the Malachim are the ones that are handing the luchos makes it actually odd.
There's no facial features on the Malach.
Correct. And I'm going to show you, right, there is no facial feature on the Malach, and that may also relate to what's going on over here, as we'll soon see. It's assumed not. Some of these machzorim, I didn't pay a lot of attention to this. Some of them, if you look really well, you'll find on a random page, he'll highlight 3 letters. And that's how they embed their name. I'm pretty sure these are different. There's a different question, and that is, you have the person who's the sofer, who draws but then who makes the art? And is it possible that where non-Jews were involved? So the answer is yes, it's very possible non-Jews were involved. But you have to remember, even if non-Jews are involved, they're making this for you Jews, and Jews feel comfortable with it and are using it for many, many years. So for all intents and purposes, in my book at least, that renders us Jewish. Okay, let's continue. When it comes to birds' heads, so what's most famous is actually a Haggadah. And although we're not here to discuss the Haggadah, but this is really where it became very famous, because a lot of people know about the bird's head Haggadah. The bird's head Haggadah was composed in Ashkenaz, same region, around the year 1300. It's today in the Israel Museum. And all of the Jews in this Haggadah have bird's heads. As you can see over here, all of the Jews. Interesting, whenever there's a Mitzri, it's just plain. It's a face without any features, but it's not a bird's head. And you can see here the Jew hat on 2 of the individuals, and one is clipped off. You may be wondering what's going on. Basically, in later generations, the end phrase, so then the binders went and they just cut off. So that's where we're missing the edges of it. But the one all the way on the bottom doesn't have that hat, does have the beak, and so therefore you have to assume that's a woman as well, which comes back to a point we've been talking about, the separation of the men and women in these images. So what you have at the top, let's start all the way at the top, you have a hand with 2 fingers, interestingly, sticking down. And that's probably Moshe Rabbeinu who's receiving these 2 tablets. And here is the first time, I believe this is the first Jewish manuscript that has it rounded tops to the luchos. And he's standing on Har Sinai, and it says Har next to this mountain, but Sinai was cut off. Now, under that, you see the same person. It seems that this is the same Moshe Rabbeinu, now handing not 2, but 5 tablets to 2 people who are receiving it, 2 to 5. That's obviously very interesting, because it could have just been 2 to 2. There's obviously something going on over here, and we'll talk about that later. What was that?
5 books of Moses.
5 books of Moses, right. So clearly it's the 5 books of Moses. The question, why? Well, why are we doing that? Why is it important for us to send that message over here? But this is the classic manuscript that has animal heads for Jews is this one.
Is that normative in non-Jewish
No.
books at that time?
In Christian Europe, there's a ton of art from this same century. There's no bird's heads. Doesn't exist. Very interesting. Okay, so this.
What could be the word force for the local?
We'll talk a little more about it. Okay, next we're going back to the world of Machzorim. This is called the Parma El Yaakov Machzer, same tkufa, composed in Ashkenaz between the year 1250 and 1300. Look at the left-hand page. It's the same word, right? Adain. Adain imnani. You see it again and again. It's about the first Yotzer for the first day of Shavuos. There's a beautiful design around that piyut. Go to the right side, and basically, you can't see, there's a Matan Torah scene on the right side, on the top. You see, how many luchos? 3. That's very bizarre.
What does that mean?
3 rounded top luchos being handed to a man who's wearing the Jew hat again, who's standing on a lower part of the hill, and then all the people behind are wearing the same Jew hat, but their faces are blank. There's nothing in their faces. So you see something clearly is going on over here in terms of the unwillingness to depict the face, as we'll soon see. Now, under the line, interestingly, is a scene of Kriyas Yamsuf. And again, it goes from left to right, which is not a Jewish way of writing. On the left side, you have Moshe sticking his staff into red water, and then on the right side, you have people drowning in the water. So this is a left to right moving scene of Kriyas Yamsuf. What is Kriyas Yamsuf doing on a Shavuos page? I have no clue. I didn't spend much time thinking about that.
Well, the fact that you have even Moshe putting his staff in the water and it's red water, I mean, they're not specific. They're very theatrical in their interpretation as it is.
Correct. So there's definitely a lot of, I don't know what the right word is, but there's different schools of art. They're not precision, looking to see, how exactly. But at the same time, not everything is random. There is some balance. And yes, anytime you see something weird, that's the $1 million question. Is that just random or is it purposeful? I don't know if there's a definitive way of answering that. But when you see a pattern amongst 5, then I think you could make a case. Okay, so this is, that's the third example of a machzer, all by the same piyut, and then one Haggadah I showed you so far. Here, this is one of the most famous machzerim. It's called the Worms Machzer. This is actually famous because from an academic perspective, they want to know, when did Yiddish become a language? So you want to look, where is the first writing in Yiddish? The first writing in Yiddish is in this machzer, in 1272, where there's writing that's clearly Yiddish language in this machzer. Unfortunately, there aren't good images available online, and as you can tell, the top got clipped. But it's the same piyut, right? You see on the right side, it's the beginning of Shachris. You have Kaddish over there, Hakel b'satzum etzezecha. And then on the left side is this piyut of Adaim imnani, Etzlo shichnani, which is that piyut on the left. And at the top, you'll see, and I'll bring it a little closer so you have a better look. Here you can see animal faces, right? And do you see the green thing in the middle coming down? That's the luchos. Okay? So there's a luchos that's coming down. And there's people on the right, there's people on the left. It's pretty much the same idea that we're seeing in these others as well. You see it's green surrounded by a red thing? The top of the middle. Remember, it's cut off. There was more here. The binder cut off the top, so it's missing. But it does seem, we can't know for sure, it does seem that that's supposed to be representing the luchos. Okay. So now we're going to do a few minutes of learning. What's going on here with the reluctance to depict the human face? The Gemara in Avodah Zarah says, Tanya teaches a brisa. Kol hapartzufois mutarin. All faces are mutter to draw. Chutz mipartzuf adam. Except for the human face, that is forbidden for us to draw the human face. And the context is because we want to create a very strong separation between us and Avodah Zarah. And the Torah says, Lo yisasa l'cha pesel, second commandment that we'll read on Shavuos, v'chol tmuna, shouldn't make any image, asher b'shamayim imal, don't make any image. Okay, there's different details. What does it mean? What's included? What's not included? There's a whole sugya in Avodah Zarah. Bottom line is here, there's a line that says, all faces are kosher except for a human face. Toisus alasar says, Toisus in Avodah Zarah, v'chein halacha, that is the halacha. The parts of Adam, asur lachtoim. You're not allowed to make it into a seal, but asur lachtoim, you're not allowed to make a human face. Umiyu, however, oisam tzures Adam, those figures of the people, shetzoivim besadinim bitzvoim, that we dye into sheets or curtains, v'chein berikma, or that we weave into garments or curtains, mutarin, that's permitted. Why is it mutarin? Kivain she'ein lahem partzuf shalem, ela chati partzuf. Because there isn't a complete face, there is only half a face. Now you have to remember, Tosus is this time, 1200s. That's the Tosus, same region. And what do you see here? He says, we're making faces. Oh, it's kosher. You know why? You're really not allowed to do it. The Gemara says you're not allowed to do faces. But you know why you're allowed to do it? Because we only do half faces. We don't do complete faces. So people are not really sure what does Tosus mean. So in subsequent literature, we have a lot of discussion. I don't want to get into the whole thing. But suffice it to say that at least one valid reading of this is that what Tosus was kashering here was a side profile, where they were making a side profile in their designs and curtains or whatever that style was, and that was considered acceptable and kosher and okay. But a complete face is usher. Well, if Tosus held that a complete face was usher, you can understand why when people are making a complete face, they are going to try to look for a substitute. That's not a parts of Adam, and they'll use an animal face instead. Now, was this definitive? Everyone thought this was the halacha? No. How do I know? Because there's another Tosus. This Tosus in Maseches Avodah Zarah. There's another Tosus in Maseches Yuma. Now, one of the important things to know about Tosus is it's not one guy. It's not one author. Every Tosus, another Masechta, is another collection that came from another school. The Tosus in Maseches Yuma is the only Tosus that's printed in the Gemara that comes from Maram Rottenburg. Maram Rottenburg, the mayor of Rottenburg, also lived at this very time. Passed away, I think, in 1290 something. Somewhere around then, maybe in 1304, and 1290s and early 1300s. And he has a Tosus. He basically put a tshuva of his into his Tosus. Look at the question. Nish'alti al oisam shemitzayrim b'machzorim. I was asked about the people who make pictures in the machzorim, and they make tzuras, chayes, va'oifois, animals and birds. Im yafois im amav. Is this okay or not? So first of all, you guys know exactly what he's talking about. The machzorim that we're seeing, and these obviously aren't the only ones, but this was a common thing. So people said, is this okay? Now, why were people asking, is this okay or not? Well, we'll see, but definitely one of the reasons was, is this considered okay? Is this was an ongoing discussion at that time. Is it okay to have images, whether it's human, whether it's animal? Is this okay? See, ask Maram Rottenburg. What does Maram Rottenburg answer? V'hishafti, I answered, nearly, it seems to me, it is not a good idea. Or in other words, if Maram Rottenburg were here, he would have said, I wish there wouldn't be the worms machzer. I wish there wouldn't be all these wonderful things that we have the ability to see. Why? When they look at those images, you're middle of davening. All of a sudden you start analyzing art. Or befrat this weird style art where you get caught up in it. He thinks it's going to distract you from kavana, and so therefore it's usher. But he continues and says, Miu, however, en kan iser de lois hasel chafesel. There is no iser lois hasel chafesel. Now when he writes this line, what does that mean? That means other people thought there was, which is why he had to negate it. Don't think there's a problem with lois hasel chafesel, b'tziyurim shehem minei tzvoim ba'ama, if it's only color. If it's not a sculpture, if it's not a thing that's sticking out, It's not 3D. You don't have to worry about it. V'loi chashina l'chshada, where you're not even worried that maybe people are going to think you're oived avodah zara. B'davar zeh she'ena loi shakea. It's not indented. V'loi boilet, and it's not an engraving. Elamin sava b'alma, it's just color. What do you see here? You see a machlokes between two different balei toises. One shit in the balei toises said it's only okay if it's a half profile. Otherwise, it's not okay. Maram Aranberg says if it's color, if it's not a 3D style image, then it's completely mutter. But I think it's not a good idea. Either way, what do you learn from here? You learn that there were those who thought that you're not allowed to have human faces because of the problem of loisasal chafesal. And so this was a discussion that was going on at that time. So it's reasonable that the at least started because of this. Don't do a human face. You saw on the Gemara, human face is more serious. We don't need to get into why. That's not our business right now. Human face is more serious. So people are like, be machmir. And once something happens, it becomes a custom. So then, even if the Rabbanim are saying it doesn't have to be that way, but if that's the way people have been doing it for the last 100 or 150 years, so I'll continue doing it that way. It's almost people become used to seeing things in a certain way.
So how would you explain one where...
Why am I saying that? I'm saying that because of the fact that if it was a real Zahirus, you wouldn't see a division, where some are and some aren't.
No,
you wouldn't see that. Right. You wouldn't see a Zahirus. You would see consistency in one work. So, for example, the bird's head Agada is consistent. The Jews have animal heads. The Mitzrim have round blank faces. Okay, that's consistent. But in the other ones, you see some and some, men and women, or women and men. So obviously it's not like the person is concerned about this. It's more of, this is a style that's been going on for the last 100 years. So that's what people do. Okay, so my flourish will be, I don't have an answer. If you're looking at, I don't have an answer for why. What I am able to say, it wasn't, at that time, it wasn't, oh, halacha, you're not allowed. No, it wasn't halacha. It was, hey, it's mutter already. But you see people were asking. If people were asking, it means there were some were saying. If some were saying, you can suggest that's how it started. And then every artist did his own thing. He decided he's going to do it this way. Menachem said before, maybe he had to do it tznius. It's possible. It's possible.
I like this better than the tznius.
No, but you could put it all together. They could all, these points could complement each other.
One thing for sure, you see that when the artist wanted to differentiate between two, either like Lutrian versus Jews or men versus women, you do one with humans and one with...
Yes, you have a few examples of that where he's trying to make distinctions, but then the question becomes, why are you making distinctions between men and women?
He had this custom of doing animals, so he incorporated, okay, we'll make the Jews, or we'll make the women.
But it's so funny.
Something like that.
The women as animals, though.
Only one.
No, the other one was the other way around.
It's in a siddur.
The other one was the other way around.
That one makes more sense.
If it would be in a magazine, they would be used.
Okay. So this is, by the way, again, if you go online, there's endless amount of speculation. Haggadahs are a very popular thing, and everyone has an opinion about this. So there's an endless amount of speculation. But I was honestly, but when I saw the sources, the fact that the question was asked, and the fact, to me, it's kamat barer that this is the origins of it. So that's topic one for tonight. And again, you see this in Shavuos more than any others because we have more pictures for Shavuos than any other Yom Tov in these machzorim. Now, we noticed before the odd situation. On the right hand, you have the bird's head Agada. By the way, it's in the Ilu Etzianu, so it says over there, it speaks about Matan Torah. That's why they put it here. You have the 2 turning into 5. And on the left, you have Lechatchila, the 3 luchos. So we want to talk about that. How do we go? What's going on over here? So let me show you more and broaden out this question a little. Here is, what's going on over here? Here. Okay. Here is another machzer. This is called the Ro machzer. It's a little later. Now you're talking 1450. So 1450, this is like the Maharil, is the big Pesach Hador in Ashkenaz at that time. Who else is alive at this time? Bartanura is writing his commentary on Mishnah at this time. Abarbanel is alive at this time, though he's a younger man. Okay. So here is its machzer. This is the opening page for, as you can see the words. It says Seder Inyan Chag HaShavuos on the top, and then it says be'erev Chag Shavuos, what you do, and there's a few lines under there. Then it says Tfilas Arvis Shachris Lamincha LeShabbos LeShavuos, and it starts Shemona Esrei, and there it gives it with a scene of Matan Torah. And when you notice that this scene of Matan Torah, there's a few interesting things. So first of all, what's Moshe holding?
Torah.
He's not holding a luchos anymore. He's holding a Torah. So this is, I want to bundle it together with the other two that were bizarre. I want to bundle this together because the argument I'm going to make is that all these are related to each other. Clearly there seems to be an emphasis on Matan Torah isn't just 10. It isn't just thing. There's much more. Okay, there's a lot more that's going on over here, and Jews seem like they're emphasizing this in a very big way. So we'll talk about that a little more. Number one. Number two. Here you see the birds, right? So you see the fire coming out of the cloud. You see the three shofars coming out of the cloud. You see the grass on Har Sinai. This is a very rich image here. The Aaron is the first man in the front that has a name on top of him. He has his hands like this. By the way, it's a whole other subject about prayer with the hands together. We have a lot of that from this time. What's different here is you have children. We didn't have children at Matan Torah than any of the other ones. This is important because we know that Rebbe emphasized the role of children in Matan Torah. They're the guarantors, they're the future, so they look really cute. You have men and women here all mingled in together, right? You can tell? You can see that, right? So that's a little different from the other ones that we were seeing. And notice some people are facing their back toward Har Sinai. At least one person. I see 3 people at least. 4 people. Some, if they're all women and toward the front, who are facing the back. Other women are facing the front. So, I don't have much to say about that. I'm literally baffled. I'm wondering if it speaks about in the Torah of how the Yidden were afraid by Matan Torah, and it says Vayamdu meirachik, and they started walking backwards. And the Gemara says that they actually went back a huge distance, and the Malachim had to come and bring them back toward Matan Torah. I'm wondering if them turned around is supposed to somehow symbolize and they don't look afraid, that's the problem. But maybe this artist didn't know how to draw emotion on a face. Maybe that's what this is, but I'm not sure at all. Okay, but my larger point here is it's Torah, it's not luchos.
Could be there like the servant of the family. The ladies are more like fancy dressed and they look simple, and the one turns their face away.
The Choliyot, I don't know, I doubt, I would think these are all Jews.
Well, that's more like they're talking to each other.
Here is 2 more examples of the same thing. These are also Haggadahs. These are scenes of Matan Torah, both Haggadahs from the exact same period. Okay, in Ashkenaz, 1470, 1480. These are twin Haggadahs, meaning they were written in the same place. One's called the Yehuda Haggadah, one's called the second Nuremberg Haggadah. And you see an image of Matan Torah, and Moshe Rabbeinu in both of them is holding, not luchos, but he's holding a Sefer Torah, and then there's a man kneeling with his hands. That's probably Aaron or whatever it is, and there are no other Jews in these images. Sorry that these images I couldn't get good quality. There is an academic paper on that, whether it's the same artist, but her answer seems to be that it's not the same artist, but it's from the same art workshop. But I didn't read the article. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities between these 2 Haggadahs.
These are all not Sephardi Sefer Torah. This and the one before.
Right, so everything that we saw so far, Ashkenaz, very interesting. I only know of one Matan Torah scene from Sfard. They had Machzorim too, but for some reason they don't have art in them. As far as I didn't see.
Because by the Arabs is forbidden.
Arabs forbidden, but the Haggadahs have. We have a ton of the Sephardic Haggadahs.
Not in Spain before the Arabs?
No, after the Arabs, from the 1300s. So I don't know. That's something I'll show you one Sephardi image of Matan Torah in a second. Okay, so what do we have over here? We have over here, it seems there's an emphasis on Matan Torah is not just about 10 commandments. Matan Torah is about more. And there are 3 ways of more. In the Birds Haggadah, 2 transfers to 5. In the, I think it was the loud Machzer, I'm probably mispronouncing it. It was lichatchila, 3 luchos that are given to Moshe, and here we saw 3 examples of Moshe Rabbeinu presenting a Torah to Yidden rather than a luchos. So what's going on over here? There's a number of Mamorei Chazal that represent a fear and a concern about overplaying the Aseres HaDibros. There's a Yerushalmi that says that really we should be reading Aseres HaDibros every single day, just like we read many other Shema every single day. But why don't we read Aseres HaDibros every day? Because of the minim, the sectarians, who would say, yeah, only the 10 were given at Sinai, and nothing else after was given at Sinai. That's just from Moshe. That was made up later, Chas v'Shalom. Only the 10 is legitimate. And the Machzor Vitri, who's 1100s in this same region, in Ashkenaz, he writes that he summarizes this teaching and he links it to Christianity. He writes, Shalo yoimru talmidei Yeshu, Yeshu's in brackets because it was taken out of some of the prints, Ein Sh'ar HaTorah Emes. So in other words, there was a thing, and I'm not an expert in Christianity, but there is a major emphasis there on the Ten Commandments as being legitimate, that they speak about how the law is abrogated. They don't say that about the Ten Commandments. Ten Commandments remain. So obviously they do some picking and choosing, where the Ten Commandments is a big deal, and the rest of the Torah, not so much a big deal. And Machzor Vitri is talking about that. And he's saying that's why we're not saying Aseres HaDibros every day, because of this concern. As a matter of fact, it's a very interesting tshuva, the Rambam, that we don't paskin like. Because on Shavuos, when we read Aseres HaDibros, and likewise Parshas Yisro and Parshas V'Chanan, we all rise for the time of Aseres HaDibros. This is minig Chabad. Most Jews today have this minig as well. Well, in this tshuva that we have from the Rambam, there was a situation where there was a custom to stand during the reading of Aseres HaDibros, and a rabbi came. He became the rabbi of the city, and he was mavatal the minig. He said, this is a terrible idea, you can't stand. And he brought a raya from the Yerushalmi that we saw earlier, that we don't want to overemphasize the Ten Commandments, because it could send the wrong message, especially when you know that there are people who are advocating this message of, Ten Commandments is different. And so this is what the rabbi does. Now the rabbi dies, and a new big macher, who the Rambam calls him Umamuna, comes into town, and he says, look, I came from Baghdad, and in Baghdad everyone's standing by the Aseres HaDibros, and he has a great argument. Let me ask you a question, by Matan Torah, were the Yidden sitting or standing? Standing. Okay, clincher, I won the argument, we should all be standing. And so they turn to the Rambam with guidance, and they say, what should we do in this situation? So the Rambam answers, Hatshuva, he says, what the rabbi who passed away said, he's right. He's right. You're not allowed to stand by the Aseres HaDibros. Why? Because you're creating levels in the Torah. You're saying this is more important, that is less important, and this is really bad. And the fact that in Baghdad they stand, well, he says, if some people are sick, do we want healthy people to become sick? That's the argument that the Rambam says. So he was really upset about this. So what do you see over here? You see, again, there is this long-standing concern, and we know that it was in Ashkenaz as well in other places, that we can't overemphasize Aseres HaDibros because there are other people who are doing it and they're taking it in the wrong direction. In fact, we have so many teachings from Chazal that go in the opposite direction. Not only to say, this is Torah from Hashem, this is Torah from Hashem, but in fact to say that in the Aseres HaDibros you have Merumas, the whole Torah. So let's talk about that for a minute. Here you have a medrash in Bamidbar Rabbah that says that, without getting into the whole limud, it says that the Taryag mitzvahs are embedded in the Aseres HaDibros, and it says if you count from Anoichi till L'Re'echa, you're going to find it's 620 words. That corresponds to the 613 mitzvahs plus 7 days of the week. Okay, later sources said, well, you could do better. Do the 7 famous mitzvahs d'Rabbanan, you could add those. But the point is that what Chazal were doing in this medrash was showing the 10, come on. In the 10, you have the 613. This is one teaching. Rashi, on the pasuk, as luchos ha'evan ha'torah v'mitzvah asher kasafti lehoiroisam, Rashi says, what's going on? It's the luchos, and right away it says Torah and mitzvah. You want to know why? Because in the luchos you have the whole Torah and mitzvah. As Rashi says, kol sheish meis v'shloish asher mitzvahs b'chlal Aseres HaDibros, all 613, and are in the 10. And here Rashi does an amazing thing. How many people does Rashi quote in his Pirush al Torah? Very few people he quotes. He quotes Rav Sadia Gaon, who lived very far away from him, a few hundred years before Rashi, wrote Azharos. Azharos is another class of piyut that has, again, it's not really part of our lives anymore, but this was when they would want to convey halacha. And, it's boring. Halacha could be boring. So how do you make it attractive? You make it attractive by writing it as a beautiful poem, and then everyone's going to read it in shul. And so they would do this like the Azharos before Pesach. they embedded a ton of halacha in it. It was written as a poem. People will read it, and then you get your information of what you needed. So it was Azharas for Shabbos Haggadah. It's called Azharas because it's warnings. It's teaching the halacha of the things you need to be careful about. And so basically anything that was a legal style piyut was called Azharas. They would find time. They were literally in shul all day, and they would find time to read it. So Rav Sadia Gaon wrote Azharas, and the nature of the Azharas you see over here is he's embedding into Anoichi all of the many of the dibros. Basically, however many mitzvahs fit into the first one, how many mitzvahs fit into the second one. So here, just a small taste. You see, he's talking about Anoichi. Go to the second paragraph. You see, it goes in the Aleph base. So he's holding Gimel here, and he says Gedilim Taslama Neu Liskar Mitzvah Shakai. So he's saying tzitzis is part of here. Because why? You're remembering God. So tzitzis is part of that. Then the next line, then you have 2 tefillin, mezuzos, and 3 tefillos. So the Rambam got really mad when he saw this, because the Rambam didn't believe that the 3 tefillos are d'oraisa. And so therefore you have a lot of that type of analysis. But here, that's just a small taste of trying to say, is about God. Which mitzvahs are about remembering God? Tzitzis, tefillin, mezuzah, davening. Okay, so all of those are merumas in the, and he's not the only one. There are other rabbis who wrote Azharos that did the same thing, trying to show how you find the 613 embedded into the mitzvahs. There are, in this teaching that you have over here, here's where we get to 3, possibly. Because you have in the Torah it says, luchos ha'evan, ha-Torah va-mitzvah, asher kasafti lo-hiroisam. So there's 3 things in the beginning. Luchos, aseres hadibris. Torah is mikra, Tanakh. Mitzvah is Mishnah, Torah Shabbat Peh. Asher kasafti, that's Nevi'im Miksuvim. Lo-hiroisam is Gemara. Is it possible, I know there's a little bit of a stretch, but is it possible that someone looks at that and says, look, the Torah, when it describes the luchos, says, luchos ha'evan ha-Torah v'ha-mitzvah. So there are 3 things here. Luchos is the 10, Torah is, as you see in the Gemara, all of Tanakh, and the third one represents Torah Shabbat Peh. It's very possible, because it's a very bizarre thing. And you do have this Gemara. Everyone knew this Gemara. So that's a possibility. So let's take a step back. What's going on over here? In the Bird's Head Haggadah, it's 2 to 5. It's clear. He's trying to send a message. I said, why do you have to do that? You have to do that because this is something, a battle Jews have been fighting for a very, very long time, especially amongst their Christian neighbors. No. The 2 and the 5, they're the same thing. And so the 2 translates very quickly into the 5. They're all from the same source. Or, even better, he was one up by the other master. L'chatchila, it's given as 3. You want to know what happened? 3 things were given. Or, one up by the other machzairim. We're just going to put Moshe Rabbeinu with a Torah. Because at the end of the day, that's what we got from Moshe Rabbeinu. We got Kol HaTorah Kula. So let's not get carried away with the concept of the 10 commandments. So that's part 2 of the thing. But I need to hold you for a few more minutes for part 3, and this one's really, really fascinating. There's one more machzer that we didn't look at yet. That's called the Leipzig machzer. And this one is really brutal getting images from, and it's unfortunate. But it's on the same piyut. I'll show you in a second. Here, you'll see. This is the page in black and white. I don't have color for it. But Odoin Imnani, it's the exact same piyut. And here on the right side, you see this picture, which is gold. You see the gold that was put in, which is really cool. That's real gold. This is done in other places where they create these very thin sheets of gold and they embed it in. And you see the Jew hat, you see the features, the noses are pretty grotesque. But this is an interesting scene of Matan Torah. Rather than a group of people's individuals, I don't know, maybe you can make a Dvar Torah of that. It says Moshe Rabbeinu on top of his thing. Okay, here's the page, and then there's that image on the left side. And the image on the left side is very perplexing. But we figured it out. So let me show you what the image on the left side is. And the fact that it's corresponding to the Matan Torah scene is important. So what's the image over here? The image over here is, start with the middle. There is a Jewish man holding a young child who's wrapped up. Okay? Jewish man holding a young child who is wrapped up. They're looking toward the left. On the left, there's a rabbi sitting on what looks like a picnic table. And there is already a young boy who's sitting on his lap. Now, the lap's going to be important, as you're going to soon see. And he has 3 kids next to him, 2 of them standing, and they're holding things in their hands. Maybe we would say, by looking at it, what would you say it is? Food. Some sort of food.
Fruit.
A fruit, an esrog, an egg, a bread, something. Okay, we'll soon see. So put these two together. Here's a father, wrapped up, seems. He's bringing his kid to cheder. This is the areinfirenish. The areinfirenish is not a new thing. This has been going on for a very long time.
So good.
And this is the areinfirenish. What does it have to do with Shavuos? Hold on a second. Let's see what it do. Well, okay, we'll see in a second. Okay, we'll see in a second. So he has his kid wrapped up. He's bringing him to the Rebbe who's going to have him on his lap. On the right side, I didn't have time to crack this one yet. They're showing water with fish in the water. Okay? Now, I don't have showing this to the kids. I don't have the interpretation for that far yet. I'm sure it's there. I just didn't have the time to find it. But let me show you this Rekeach that is written mamish at this time. The Rekeach, his name was Elazar Rekeach. He lived 1176 to 1238. And look what he writes. Minig Aviseinu. Shemoishivin hatinoikos lomid b'shvuos lefi shenitna b'Torah. When is the day? It's not so clear from this line, but this is the meaning of it. When is the day when we bring the kids for the first time in their life to cheder? It's going to be on Shavuos, because that is the day of Torah. And he goes on to say, and what is the symbol for the fact that we don't want the kids to see a dog on that day? He says, well, by Matan Torah, animals weren't allowed to go on Har Sinai. Separation between the mountain and the animal. So too, separation between the kid who's going to learn Torah and the animal. So you see, they were particular. They didn't want their kid to see a non-kosher animal on the way to the cheder. Kalois HaShachar, in the fourth line, or the third line of the reading, Yom Atzeres, early in the morning, Mevian Hana Arim, we bring the kids to Shul, or the base medrash, Al Shem, B'Yos HaBaiker, because of Rakim, to commemorate what happened then. In the morning, Umechasin Oisai, we cover him, Tachas HaMakturim, sorry, I don't know what that word is, but we're covering him.
It's a jacket, in modern Hebrew.
Jacket, okay. Mi Beisam, Ad Beis HaKnesses, Oyad Beis HaRav. To the shul's house or to the teacher's house. Al Shem v'yisyatu b'tachtas har. Why are we covering him? That reminds us of the fact that Jews were covered by the mountain. So we're going to cover him with the jacket.
Clearly, they shouldn't see the dog. Isn't that maybe the
No, it didn't say cover him. Oh, mechasin, yes. So I guess two reasons. Yeah.
Are you saying?
There are two reasons for covering.
That's why we cover the kids now?
Yeah, not to see anyone outside. They should just
This is the two reasons. Number three, then he continues, and he says, look at these words. This is the clincher. We put him in the teacher's lap who's going to teach him. And then you bring the board. It says Aleph Beis Gimel, and it says Tov Shin Reish Kuf, and it has the pasuk Torah Tziva, and it has the pasuk Torah Teum Nasi. That's some poem. I don't know what it is. We bring Vayikra al Moshe. The Rebbe learns with him. Ois. The child says after it. You put honey on this board. The kid licks it. You bring a cake that was made with honey. Remember, they were holding food, and it has psukim on it. They read the psukim. You bring an egg. That's this. Mevushalas, and it has psukim. They read it, and then they eat it. This is clear. This is what's going on over here, and they depicted it on the Shavuos thing because this is the same thing. You see the Rekeach saying they correspond with each other, right? We're mimicking the covering and the other things, and so that's it. Now, what's really amazing here is that the evidence suggests that the mucker of eating milchiks on Shavuos starts here. Okay? Now, it's not so difficult. Why? Rekeach talks about ugois with dvash. He does not mention milchiks. However, the Machzor Vitri talks about the same areinfirenish, just with one detail missing. He doesn't say you do it Shavuos. But what he does say is that the bread is made milchiks. And he says the reason is because the Torah the pasuk says, Dvash v'chalav tachas l'shoinech, that the Torah is sweet as milk and honey that's under your tongue. And so therefore, on the day of the areinfirenish, you make the bread milchik. I don't think it's crazy to suggest that the Rekeach, I can't explain why the Rekeach didn't mention it. But I don't think it's crazy to suggest that Shavuos morning, they were bringing kids to the shul, they were giving them the ugos, and there were honey in them, and there was dvash in them. In fact, and so once the kids are doing it, so let's also all partake. And if you look at a work from 100 years later, the Kolboy, same region, look what he says, Nagu lechol dvash v'chalav b'chagav Shavuos, because the Torah is nimshal dvash v'chalav, and he brings the exact same pasuk. So I think, and others think this as well, that this is the mucker. This is the mucker for there are other reasons as well, but the earliest sources that give a reason, this is their reason. And this is how it starts from the areinfirenish, where they were given the kids honey and milk-based. Oh, guys, one more point. You have the Rothschild machzer. The Rothschild machzer is a very chashva scene. Here's another Matan Torah scene you could see over here. And what's unique about this is, just like in the other one I showed you before, men and women are here standing together. It's the same period as the other one. Men and women are standing together. And I said, one sec, I'll take it. I said I'll show you. This is the only image I have from Spain. This is from the Sarajevo Agada, where they have an image of Matan Torah, and here as well on the left side. Here as well, Moshe standing there, and it's men and women who don't have any hands standing around the mountain together. So interesting. I asked guys today in the office. I said, anyone have any sources that discuss what was the matzav by Matan Torah? Was a family standing, or was it men and women separate? So it sounds like a basic question. No one could think. We looked a little. We didn't do anything extensive. There aren't any mefeirisha, easy sources that discuss this question, which is fascinating. They can't have relations for 3 days. Can't have relations 3 days. Doesn't mean you can't stand next to your wife. So were you standing next to your wife on Matan Torah or not? Was it men and women separate? It sounds like such a basic question. Why is there no sources on it?
Cultural assumptions on it.
Okay, but still, Chazal should have said something. Okay, but I will tell you this. There was a division in terms of men and women conceptually based on this medrash. It's a really beautiful medrash over here. Some elements of it aren't politically correct, but on the other hand, it's a beautiful concept. Look what the medrash says. Come and see how the voice was by the Jewish people, by Matan Torah. Everyone heard God's voice in accordance to their abilities, and it gives a list. Old people, they heard what they could hear. Habachurim lefi koichan, hanaorim lefi koichan, va'aktanim lefi koichan, va'hayankim lefi koichan, va'hanoshim lefi koichan, va'af Moshe lefi koichan. And then it brings the pasuk Kol Hashem bekoyach. Doesn't say God's bekoichoi, God's koyach. No, koyach. Why? Everyone heard the message in a way that's tailored to them. Va'af hanoshim hamu'ubarais, who are in their own state, kefi koichan. Have a yomer kol echad ve'echad lefi koichan. So maybe men and women were standing together, but there was a difference in the sense that this medrash is saying the male experience of Matan Torah was not the same as the female experience of Matan Torah. Is it possible to suggest, maybe, that the artists, when they were dividing men and women, were they trying to convey that? Probably not. But can we impose that on that art? Yeah, I think we could if we wanted to. There is a beautiful message here in this medrash about how, yes, on the one hand, it's Torah achas, and it's one message. But at the same time, Torah is supposed to talk to each individual in a way that relates to them and their station in life. And that's something I think we need to figure out how to tap into, and I'm glad I'll just end with the following point. Lo yamedush ikar ela amaisa, and this is conveyed in two images that we saw. Because in the Bird's Head Agada, right under the receiving of the luchos, is someone doing the first mitzvah. The first mitzvah is Achodesh Hazeh Lachem, and you're supposed to take the seh and prepare the carbon Pesach, and there's a woman there with an animal and the spit doing the carbon Pesach. So I translate this as the Torah needs to be translated into Ma'aseh B'Poel, into the first mitzvah. And likewise, in the image we saw earlier, the two luchos that turned into one, all the way at the bottom of the scene, even though it's Shavuos, you have a guy baking matzah, another early mitzvah, first or second mitzvah that Yidden got in the Torah. And so here is this idea of not allowing Torah to just remain in theory, but actually bring it into practice. So this is some wonderful lessons and ideas that I think that it's just an amazing treasure that we're able to take a look at now and really learn all these wonderful things. So thank you all for your attention.